Hello everybody, it's Woody again. I put up a basic tips thing yesterday, and I had sort of a misstep on because I was so exhausted. I apologize. I misnamed the actual arpeggio that I was discussing, and it actually ends up that it is supposed to be called an augmented arpeggio, and it's basically an augmented triad. Of course, is made up of two major thirds, and if, for instance, if we were doing a G augmented triad, which sounds like this, and if we make that a full octave, anyway, if you take that G augmented triad and add the octave to it, you have a 4-note arpeggio, and they are made up of all major thirds. So in the case of fret-wise, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 frets that we're spanning for each one of those. If that makes sense. So that's the arpeggio that we're talking about, or that I was speaking of yesterday when I put that video out. So I've had some people ask me about it, and so I thought I'd do a little more extensive study into that, or analyzation of that particular device. And in this case, it would not be called a whole tone. What I meant by that was that the way I was moving that particular pattern was in the interval of a whole note, or a whole step, or a whole note, and on here, which would be two frets. So if we take that arpeggio, which starts on a low G, right, and we move it up 2 frets, we continue that pattern up another 2 frets on B, right, then on C sharp or D flat, continue it to E flat, and F, and back to G. So that's just outlining the arpeggio, just spelling it out and back down. In this particular device, what we do is we take the pattern, play it ascending or descending, however you want to start, and then you're going to do the opposite once you get to the highest point. So in this case, we'll take the low G, B, D sharp, and G, and then I'll move up to A, and I'm going to descend now. A, F, C sharp, A, and then I move to B, B, D sharp, G, B, then C sharp, A, F, C sharp, and I continue that. That's the device, and it's actually an augmented, an octave or 4-note augmented triad, augmented arpeggio. I'm going to say the wrong thing again. I hate when there's misinformation out there, and I should be chief of patrolling that, even for myself, and so I apologize, and hopefully this will make that right. But anyway, I'm going to give you another possibility of movement. You can move it in different intervals. I've utilized the idea of whole tone or whole steps, which we just did, which is 2 frets away. You can also use a scale form, and what that means is you're basically using the whole tone scale as your intervallic movement. In other words, those are the intervals you're using, just whole notes always, and which 2 whole notes makes a major third. So that's how it kind of works with this particular. Because every major third up, of course, you're kind of repeating the exact same arpeggio in just starting on a different note. Now, the other thing you can do with this is you can experiment with the idea of moving on the scale form that is a half step, whole step, or diminished scale. This is called a number of things in the contemporary legit world. When I first heard of this scale form, it was called an octatonic scale, and I was trying to give myself a reference point so that I could know how this scale sounded, and it was pretty exotic to me at the time. And that scale form sounds like this. If we're still in the key of G, you do half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. And that particular scale form is pretty useful with altered 5/7 chords, dominant 7 chords that have some alterations in it. It doesn't work for everything, because if you have an augmented fifth on it or a sharp 5, of course it'll kind of change some things. But generally with altered 5/7 chords, again, that's a pretty good scale. But it has a certain exotic sound to it. And back in the day when I first heard it, I was unfamiliar with, you know, how I could have a reference point for it. But this will date me, of course. But the way I was able to find a quote from something that I knew and I could use a reference point was the old Mission Impossible TV show from the 60s, probably early 70s maybe too. Lalo Schifrin, of course, did that. You know, that thing, you know that from even the modern day Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible. But within some of the scenes in the TV show, he had some sound cue music that had a theme that was played over and over. And I'm going to go to the key of C now, and it sounded a little bit like this. Every one of those notes happened to be an octatonic scale and a half step, whole step, diminished scale. And so that was one way I was able to kind of get the sound of that scale in my head, which helped me when I would hear it, you know, being played in whether it was a jazz circumstance or any kind of genre. So I started to utilize that scale years later a good bit, because it's very applicable to, as I said, the 5/7 or some kind of altered 5/7 chord, and mostly in a jazz context, of course. But I've found, you know, places where you can use it even in a pop context. You just have to be, you know, have some sense about it, common sense about it. But anyway, what you can do then is to take that augmented arpeggio, that G, and let's say we have a G7 chord. You can move it to the half step. We're going half step, whole step. So, and then whole step, half step, which will sound like this. And you just go up and down the scale that way. Now I'm going to play a little example of some keyboard stuff. Hopefully the balance will be okay audio-wise here. I'm still experimenting, so I apologize with that, so that you'll be able to hear properly. We'll let this keyboard thing kind of run, and I will run some of the examples of what I'm talking about, either going whole tone, you know, up and down in whole steps, or in the half step, whole step category. So let's try that. So hopefully that gives you a little better idea of what I was talking about. You're welcome to like this and share it if you do happen to like it, and try to tune in as weekly. I try to give you as many basic tips that I have that might help you along the way in your playing, and give you a little bit of theory, hopefully with that, if I can not misstep again and put the wrong name in. But my bad, and hopefully this makes that a little better. Continue to look for that. I do also teach privately online, so if you're interested in learning some new concepts or improving something technique-wise that you think maybe I might be able to help you with, I'm glad to do it. You can message me on YouTube when you see this video, or on Facebook or Instagram. And again, it's Woody Lingle, and thanks for tuning in. Hope this cleared a few things up. We'll see you the next time. Bye.